Good day, good evening, good wherever you are in the world. My name is Kerry Mussington, and today I bring. You said I'd announce you how I wanted to, so I'm going to announce you as Dicken Bettinger. Is that how I've
Yeah,
said the name completely right?
yeah, that's right. Dicken Bettinger.
Yeah. Well, I do suicide prevention for a living and awareness, and I'm very keen to find a different understanding of exploring the mind and what you had to bring to the table to somebody out there is going to be listening to what you
Yeah,
have to say, because there are people searching for a way forward out of this depression. And it's important that some issues are discussed. So, bringing in awareness, bringing in different people, such as yourself, I'm honoured to have you here today. Thank you so much for coming.
yeah,
Um,
you're welcome, Kerry.
yeah. So, can you tell us a little about what you deliver and what you do and where you're coming from right now?
Yeah, yeah. I'm talking to you from the state of Washington in the northwest corner of the United States. Uh, I live here with my wife, and I have two grown kids and four grandkids. And about when I first graduated from college, I became a high school English teacher. And I looked very, very young. I think I looked younger than the high school students I was teaching. And parents' night, when I stood there in my sports coat and tie, the parents thought I was a student playing a prank. Uh, so, uh, but because I looked so young and I felt so much compassion for my students, I had countless students coming to me to talk about their personal problems.
Mhm.
And I got very interested, and then I became very passionate about what can I share with people that will make them have an easier time of life. So I went back and got my master's degree in counseling psychology, and then I got a doctorate in counseling psychology and became licensed as a psychologist. So I left teaching so that I could continue my role as teacher, but in the field of in psychology. And so 44 years ago, I became licensed as a psychologist, and I've had the opportunity uh, to work with people from every conceivable background. And then for 16 years, I worked in large companies teaching people how to use their minds more wisely so they could do better there. And it affected not only the people in the companies, but their families, because as people get healthier, they have an effect on everybody in their family. And that was very rewarding. And 10 years ago, I started my own practice and began traveling the world to run seminars in psychological well being. And I wrote a book about psychological well being called Coming Home. So now I do a lot of my work on Zoom. I did about 84 seminars last year on psychological well being. I talk at conferences. I train other trainers to
Mhm.
work with people and recognize their well-being and help people access their own well-being. So that's a short version, Kerry, of what
Very
I.
short version. But did you actually, growing up before you got to, because there's a big gap that you just jumped straight to the college. Did you
Yeah,
experience any trauma or anything that you went through yourself?
I was incredibly anxious and insecure.
And in those instances,
Uh,
wow, okay, go ahead.
Trauma. I mean, I grew up with an alcoholic father. Uh, I withdrew and experienced great anxiety. I couldn't really talk to women until I met my wife in college. Was the first woman I felt comfortable just talking to. And so what I was learning to help other people was also helping me.
There we go. There it right is, because generally when we've been hearing about the three principles, it's kind of often skipped, and we talk solely on those three principles. But those people that are listening to your background, I'm not getting you skipping. I'm actually identifying that before you got to the awareness of your life, there was that instability. There was that, you said anxious, you used the word anxious. What does the anxious experience feel like, being anxious? What does that feel like?
My mind goes blank and I don't know what to say.
Was you shy?
I could be with people and get so anxious I couldn't think.
Mm-hmm. Was there any other telltale tips that you call social anxiety?
It just affected every area of my life.
There you go. So over in the UK, we'd call that social anxiety, not wanting to be around other people, events. There were triggering events for you. So you had to find a way out of these triggers, these thought process, the bad habits that you probably encountered. And this is your way of repairing yourself, and taking your life back, was to know more about the mind. And
yeah, well, before that, I tried other things that didn't work so well. Drugs and alcohol, and anything that could sort of numb the pain I was feeling.
That's what I call. A lot of people won't like my knowledge about what. How can I put this? Drinking, smoking, drugs, alcohol. It's very easy to say addiction. Use that word as drug and alcohol addiction. It's very easy to use that word, but I'd like to replace that word and say it is a form of self-harm, because you're doing it to injury to oneself. So, it wouldn't be very nice for my viewers out there, for people that are on the platform, to say, hey, I'm a drinker, but that's a self-harm. They wouldn't even think about putting it that way. But that is actually what was happening to a lot of people. That happened to myself. Relied upon drink and that social environment to make me feel good, but it was just a mask, facing up to fears. And this is what you're identifying, isn't it, when you're dealing with your college people, etc., that you're hearing their stories, and it's a reflection of you, was it, a little bit?
Well, I had a lot of compassion for people who were struggling.
Yeah.
That's why in high school, I didn't see kids as being troublemakers. All the other teachers in school labeled so many of the kids as troublemakers, and I just saw kids like myself that were struggling to get by, doing the best they could. So I told them, give me every one of those kids. I don't care, put them in my class, because when they're in my classes, they don't cause trouble.
Because you
I don't see them. I don't see them as troublemakers. I see them as really cool kids who at times get all caught up in their thinking the way I was.
Isn't it funny how they use the word troublemakers when actual fact they turn around and say troubled people? There is the underlying issue of why they are troubled. And then at home it's one thing, going to school was another story. Sometimes it's a little bit of relief, but then sometimes when you're at school, some people are faced with it all over again, being troubled at school because of certain individuals, different love languages that they speak with each other. Some more authority, some are controlling, so some are very damaging. So the lowest of the lowest, did you ever hit rock bottom?
I don't know. I was suffering a lot. My
When did
dad, my dad died at 56, and I was headed in the same direction. I thought that was really young for somebody who, when his mind was free and clear, was a really kind, loving man, and he was successful in his community. In his private life, he was tormented, and
mm,
my parents' relationship couldn't survive that. They got divorced, and that was very painful.
your story sounds a bit like mine, with the alcohol and things like that, and then watching my parents with the alcohol, which caused the detriment. But then, being a child, being surrounded by that, it's very, very similar to mine. That one, that part there. So you get lost, nowhere to go.
Yeah. And I developed this notion that I could be sort of happy on the outside, but inside I was broken and damaged.
Okay.
And when I entered the field of psychology, they supported that view of human beings. So everybody had a mental illness that you would have for life, and
Yeah.
people were damaged goods. And so when you feel like there's something wrong with you and you're damaged and you're not the same as other people, it's very disheartening. It's why a lot of people lose hope,
Mhm.
because they do a lot of suffering and they feel like there's no hope because they're damaged goods.
And the words that are thrown out as oh, you're just drama, or you're this, or you're this, that. There's just added words on top of the injury already, and you're beaten down by words.
Well, the reason why there hasn't been more compassion for people who are suffering is that there hasn't, the view of psychology for many, many years was that people were damaged,
Mm.
and that early experiences really would cause irreparable damage to people. And the best you could do is to work hard to develop a strong ego so you could be healthy enough to get through life. Freud's notion of well-being was the best you can hope for is to become a well-adjusted neurotic. And so the view in psychology was not very hopeful. And I had so much compassion for people who were suffering that I was drawn toward teachers in the field of psychology who were interested in well-being as opposed to illness. And it makes a difference what you focus on. And so I studied with early pioneers in the field of psychology who believed that people were good. And then they get caught up in their thinking in ways that creates enormous suffering. So you take any human being, and if they have some negative thoughts come into their head, which is normal, and then they grab onto those thoughts, and then they hold those thoughts, I'm broken, I'm damaged, I'm no good, I'm unlovable, I can't be like other people, what's wrong with me? Any human being who holds on to thoughts like that and starts believing that they're true will suffer terribly.
Absolutely.
And so when I worked with people as a psychologist who were suffering, I started noticing that they were all doing that. But I also noticed and was being taught by other psychologists in the field that all human beings at time become really present and their mind quiets down. And when they do, they exhibit signs of well-being. No exception. No exception. So I became, if I wanted to help kids like the students that I had in my classes that were tormented by the self-concepts they had of themselves and by the thoughts that they were thinking all day long. And it could be thoughts of I'm no good, or it could be judgments about themselves and other people. I hate this, I hate that, I can't stand this. And they live in that thinking. And so my heart went out to them, Kerry. And I wanted to, I was open and drawn toward teachings that didn't throw people into the trash bin and say, you're broken, you're damaged goods. I did a training in a prison, and one of the guys said, people here think we're trash. And he took a piece of paper and he crumpled it up and he threw it into the center of the circle of 10 ex-violent offenders I was talking to. And he says, they think we're trash, and they just, prison is the trash bin. And my experience is everybody is a beautiful person. And at times we all get caught up in thinking in such a way that we suffer. And I saw no exceptions to that. That was certainly true of me. It was true of my father. It was true of all the students. But I also saw with those students that when they were in class and I treated them with kindness and love and respect, all that negative thinking started to fall away, and they would laugh, and they started to enjoy learning, and they would participate, and they felt cared for, and they were kind to one another. And so there were psychologists that says, well, that's just a covering. And underneath all of that is the rotten core. And then I'm studying psychologists who had the exact opposite opinion, who said, no, that you got it backwards. Underneath all of that is how we're born: present, awake, alive, no judgments, no shoulds, no negative story in our head, no negative self-concept, no negative beliefs that we think are true. That's our natural state. And then we gradually develop our intellect and get more and more caught up in and involved in our thinking. And it's inevitable that suffering is the byproduct of being caught up in negative thought. It's a byproduct.
I will concur.
I've seen no exceptions to that, Kerry, with anybody. And I've worked with people who have had every single psychiatric diagnosis that can be given.
I will agree with you on that. I'm only going from my own experience. When you talk, you pull me back into where I used to be. Only I'm looking back of
yes,
how erratic it was, how irrational it was, how the thought process would just be like. I think what unbalances me is a relationship. That's where, oh gosh, it's changed again, and that's where a lot of people with my diagnosis have relationship problems. They want to get close.
Yeah.
They push away.
Well, I have relationship problems when I'm caught up in my thinking. And right now I have a wife of 53 years that I'm madly in love with. I'm caught up in my thinking. I don't communicate well, and I have negative thoughts in my head, and if I get caught up in that thinking, I'm not very kind at that moment, and I don't communicate well, and then I can wake up out of that thinking, it falls away, and I fall back in love with her, and I communicate beautifully. And I started noticing that's true for anybody. When our heads are clear and we're present, anybody communicates beautifully. People don't need a course in communication to communicate beautifully. Show me anybody caught up in their thinking, and they'll be struggling to communicate well.
So I think then because it sounds, I'm smiling, it sounds beautiful. 53 years. If only I had 53 years. I don't, though. You know, that's really nice. But one of the things, talking about 53 years.
Kerry, learning this saved my life.
Of course.
It saved my life. I know I would have ended up becoming more and more dependent upon alcohol, and I already was in several uh, uh, dangerous
Yeah,
drunken driving, near death accidents where I passed out and did 360s and went off the road. And there was no reason at all to think that wouldn't have been the path I would have continued to follow. And then I start studying people in the world who have hope for people, who see people as having well-being inside, who see how innocent it is for anybody to get caught up in thought, we're going to feel whatever we're thinking. So if we get caught up in negative thought, we're going to feel bad. And I've asked tens of thousands of people all over the world, where do you think that bad feeling comes from? And not a single person goes, oh, it's thought. Because they haven't been taught that. Now we're teaching this.
The word fear, which is for what you're fearing about. And so when people over here explain to me their anxiety, I say to them, what are you fearful for? What are you thinking about? What are you overthinking about? Because it's what you're talking about. So when we talk about anxiety, we are talking about the overthinking and the irrational decision making that one is making based on thinking the worst. And so, I mean, I felt that anxiety before. What if the viewers that listen, what anxiety feels like for me? For instance, I would pick up the phone, I would try and make a telephone call. If it's my stuff, I found it difficult because I felt that I was going to be judged, even on a telephone call.
Yeah, no, I know that.
All
It's
the
easy to
fear
get caught up in fearful thinking, caught up in.
I had to turn it. I had to turn it away around. So those, when I did have to take an action, those little things wouldn't bother me. I managed to work through it in a better way, rather than in a panic way. So that's where I've progressed, having to, where you're talking about changing the thought process. And that's what we have to do from what we've been taught, having to undo it and be in control. So your light bulb moment, you know, I can feel your story when you're saying you're helping, giving back. That's why
that's how it feels. I'm always paying it forward. I'm so grateful that I learned something that helped me begin to be less burdened by my thinking and allow my natural well-being to shine forth. It's like when the clouds that were caught, the storm clouds were caught up in, all that thinking we're caught up in begins to fall away. What's left in people is well-being. It's like the sun shines back through again. I've seen this over and over again, working with clinically depressed people, anxious people, people who have gone to prison for rage and have been living in rage. And none of them innocently have been taught that your feelings of tension, stress, and upset are created by the thinking you're doing in the moment. And when people begin to see that this tension they're feeling is not being done to them by the world or by their past or by their personality or by life, they begin to see, oh, it's just innocent. I'm just caught up in some thinking. And when people realize that, people naturally, when they realize it's my thinking creating this suffering I'm in right now, this feeling, the feeling, not what happened. Horrible stuff happens to people. It would be like if somebody hits you in the head with a baseball bat and you walk away with the baseball bat and keep hitting your head with all kinds of negative thinking that you think is true. And when people begin to realize, oh, wait a minute, what I'm feeling right now, what happened was horrible, horrible. But right now, what I'm feeling is being created by my thinking, because the great discovery blew me away, Kerry. When we realize that it's our thinking, we don't have to fix it, change it, improve it. We just let it go. Come back to the now. And in the now, that thinking will begin to quiet down fade away, you're not giving it attention. You're not holding on to it. And when it falls away, in the now is the only place we can find our well-being for anybody. Is people, when people's heads clear without trying and without doing anything, they start feeling a little better. And when they feel better, they start being able to do better in life, communicate, be with people, enjoy going for a walk in the woods, enjoy the food you're eating because you're present. That's where human beings' well-being comes forward. Now, I had been a psychologist for 10 years studying mental health, and I still didn't know where my feelings came from, Kerry. And I met a teacher named Sydney Banks who made it very clear that the only place any feeling is created from is our thinking. Because as our thinking changes, our feelings change. And you have two people in the same situation, they have two completely different feelings. I often would be with my wife freaking out, and she'd be calm as can be. And I'm thinking, well, the situation is causing me to freak out. And why isn't it causing her to freak out? Well, we had different thinking. And I didn't know that. So then I learned two things, Kerry. One is my feelings come from thought. Now that helped me immediately to start catching times when I'm caught up in my thinking, and I would just say, well, why am I holding on to this thinking? Why am I continuing to think about this if it's creating this feeling? Why would I keep doing that? And I come back to the present moment, and I do the opposite of what I used to do. I just let go of that completely. When I would, I'd feel better. And when I felt better, I could deal with anything going on in my life better. Anything, any horrible stuff. I still have to deal with it. So you either deal with it. Why, I used to try and deal with all my problems while I was caught up in negative thought. It didn't go very well. Yeah, I was either fearful or angry. And I would bring that to other people, and they didn't go, "Thank you, Dicken. Now I feel better. Now we can work this out." And then it was like I started taking responsibility for my own feeling, and my life started changing. And the second thing I learned is that when my head clears, this natural well-being starts coming forward. And I've seen this in every client I've worked with over in the last 44 years.
Yeah, I know. So, do you know what? I'm like lifted because when when someone is giving you a conversation, the conversation is it relatable? That's
Yeah.
what's happening when I'm sitting here. So I'm taking everything in that you're saying, and I'm thinking, this is how
Let,
I feel.
what I like about this is ordinary too. I still have all the same feelings. I get anxious, I get upset, but those feelings don't scare me anymore, and they're
Yeah.
friendly. They're friendly because they're reminding me I'm caught up in thought, and it's like an alarm clock going off to wake me back up. And when I come back to the now, I calm down, I feel better. And then when I feel better, I have all the common sense I need to deal with all the difficult things that I've had to deal with in my life. It's not like my life has been easy. It's like with more well-being available to me, I have an easier time dealing with all the difficult things we all have to deal with.
I totally can relate to what you're saying. It's
Mm.
really a nice conversation because for me, I'm sitting back proud of my achievement. I'm proud
Mhm.
that I'm going forward, and based
Yeah.
on your conversation, it's actually like a validation for me in a sense. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like that car park ticket that comes through the door. How are you going to deal with that? I don't deal with it in the way I could have done, where I let it sap out my energy. No, I logically think, oh,
Mm.
okay. this is a little bit of work for me, isn't it? The universe is lining
Yeah,
me up to do something, and I'm going to learn something from this. And so that's how I've learned to
yeah,
play with the process of removing the negative by replacing with a different thought process of, you know what, it's going to be all right. You know, haven't we been here before? Can we accomplish it a different way? And you know, especially it's it's nice for me to get your breath of fresh air today. So you put uncovering the fund. I've got your written down. Number one, I can't even read my own writing. It's terrible, isn't
oh, oh
it?
yeah, yeah. No, that's hard to read somebody else's writing.
your book, you did a book, and many people that have had a journey do want to write a book. Now,
Yeah,
I guess a tip when it comes to concentration. Do you have a tip on that book? And you've read, your book was Coming Home, Uncovering the Foundation of Psychological Wellbeing.
yes, yes. Coming home is a metaphor. I think everybody is trying to come home. Now, home is a metaphor for anybody I've ever been with. There are times when people, for whatever reason, they feel comfortable or relaxed, and they feel like they've come down out of being uptight, all stressed out. They've come down and they go, ah, this feels good. This right now, I feel good. Right now, I feel good. This, and I didn't know that home or well-being was my default setting. In other words, if I let go of everything I'm thinking, not just the negative thoughts, I don't want to be caught up in trying to think positive. I did that for years. It took so much work and effort. If I let go of everything I'm thinking,
Mm.
I start feeling more relaxed, start feeling more peaceful without even working on it. I start feeling more myself,
Mm.
start feeling more comfortable. It's like coming home at the end of a hard day's work and sitting in your favorite chair and you let everything go and you go, oh, this feels good. Well, I didn't know that was always there inside me, that well being, that it's my default setting. And it's the default setting for any human being who falls out of their thinking and rests in the now has a different feeling when they're caught up in negative thought, thinking it's true, and then feeling compelled to act on that view of life. That gets any of us into trouble. That's when I get into trouble still, Kerry. I get caught up in some thinking and I'm really caught up, and maybe my wife will notice I'm caught up and she'll go,
Do
Dicken.
you, do you think having your wife by your side for over 53 years, that's a long time, but having your wife, the yin and yang of different languages, would not having your wife by your side to prompt you on conversations of like, you know, because she's the rational side of it, of you when you're got
It,
caught
it,
up in that thinking. So she's like,
there's no question it helps.
yeah.
I'm eternally grateful for my wife.
Mhm. Yeah.
She, there are some people that we meet in life who just seem very relaxed and at ease with themselves. In other words, they've somehow on their own discovered the benefits of not holding on to thoughts that burden us.
Mm.
For whatever reason, they've had an insight about that. Maybe they were young, or maybe they just suddenly realized, why would I keep thinking about this? Look what it's doing to me right now.
Mhm.
And so when I met my wife, it was unusual for me to be with someone who was so present and down to earth and kind. just warm. And she would get upset and she'd just get a little quiet and not hold on to it, and it would just sort of flow through her.
Mm.
When I first met her, I was doing all of these techniques to try and build my well-being that I didn't think I had. So I was meditating 4 hours a day. I was working on affirmations every day. I had journals where I would write down everything I was thinking and try and reframe it. I worked on 5 dreams a night. I'd write them down by flashlight pen in the middle of the night, and I had all my dreams to work on. I did all that work. I was reading all of these books in psychology about theories about why we're so messed up and what we could do about it and all the techniques. And then I start learning, wait a minute, I'm just like everybody else. This is what I learned from my teacher. I'm just like everybody else. I think, I'm aware, and I have a mind. Who doesn't?
That's right.
Every human being thinks. Very few people understand the role their thinking plays in creating their experience, because I've asked tens of thousands of people, literally, what are you feeling and where do you think that feeling is coming from? People haven't learned, oh, there's only one source for what we're feeling, the mental activity we're having at that moment. Because when our thinking changes, our feelings change, right? As we just haven't been taught that. Now there are people all over the world teaching this in schools. Unbelievable. The iHeart program in England and the research coming out of that and the benefits for kids to learn this at an early age, that they think and feel, and they can be aware of that. And when they start letting go of more and more thought, and they stop feeling like their feelings are done to them. So they stop feeling so victimized. It's very empowering to see kids begin to see that they're not their feelings are not caused by the world. They're created in the moment from their own thinking. It's like, oh, that's all it is. This is all it is. I don't have to fix it. There's nothing broken. I'm just like everybody else. I think and I feel, and it's normal to have these feelings. There's nothing wrong with feeling tension, stress, or upset, but it makes a big difference where I think it comes from. If I think
Yeah.
it comes from the world, I'm screwed. There's nothing I can do. If I begin to realize through insight, wait a minute, I'm just like everybody else. There's my friend caught up in some thought and feeling that feeling. They think that feeling is caused by something that happened days ago.
Yeah.
They don't know that it's being created right now by their thinking, because in the next minute they get distracted, they stop thinking about it, the feeling doesn't exist anymore because it's not being created by thought.
And this is where, from experience, when been a trigger there, it's a constant, let's play back over that old record. And sometimes we have to change that old record, and do with what I do is use a distraction technique. And then
Yeah.
that's a classic example on the other foot of this language over here. Um, Distraction techniques are really good when someone's in a panic, and that's what you're saying, created in the thought, how you can change that.
My feeling becomes my friendly reminder of when I'm caught up in thought in a way that's not helping.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, it's a perfectly designed system.
Yeah.
It's working perfectly. So when I get caught up in negativity, my feelings let me know that's all that's happening. And then without a technique, I let go of what everything I'm thinking at that moment, come back to the now. So if people really see it's thought, they come back to the now. Here's a metaphor I used. One time I'm walking down the street, Kerry, and I'm thinking about something and I'm pissed. And I'm going, I can't believe it. And and I'm just getting all worked up. And it's a beautiful day. Nothing's happening, nothing around me. I'm just thinking up a story that's creating a very strong emotion in me.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of memory involved in this story. Okay. And then, for whatever reason, because I was learning about this, I all of a sudden went, oh my God, I'm thinking up a frenzy right now. It's just me. I'm just here thinking away. And it's creating this incredible story and incredible feeling. And just in that moment, I just stopped and looked around, and it was a beautiful day. And I kept walking, and it went away. But then mind is a deeper intelligence. It's not our brain, it's a deeper intelligence. This deeper intelligence brought me a thought I'd never had before. That's how it works. When our minds are clear, we get new thinking, comes out of this creative energy of life. I get a new thought, and it's like all of a sudden I saw myself as a kid watching cartoons, and they had these great big hammers, and they would always hit people on the heads with the hammers, and people would get all dizzy, and they'd have birds chirping and see stars. And I saw myself, when I was angry, hitting myself on the head with the angry thought hammer.
Yeah.
And then I started thinking, but I got a whole bag of hammers. I got a little worry hammer. It's a little hammer, just, oh my God, what's going to happen? I don't know. I don't know if I can do this. And I don't like this. I don't want to go. I don't, right? Now, here's what I'm realizing is people begin to realize that thought creates their feeling. More and more, they start catching themselves with their thought hammers.
Mm-hmm.
Worry hammer, negativity hammer, judgment hammer, and overanalyzing hammer. And when people see the reason why I have a headache is because of the hammering, there's nothing out there doing it. People don't need a technique to put the hammer down. I've never, if somebody came in and they were hitting themselves with a hammer saying, I am so upset. I can't believe my roommate is such a jerk. I can't believe they're doing this. And you say, well, I'm sorry your roommate's a jerk. I take your word for it, but what about the hammer? And they go, what hammer? Because people go, what thought? When people begin to learn feelings come from thought, it's invisible. People don't know that it's thought. They don't know that the thought hammer is being used.
Mm-hmm.
And when people realize it, people don't go, what are the 7 steps for putting this hammer down? They go, oh my God, I didn't realize. That's just my thinking. And they put it down. If people really see that what they're feeling is created from thought, they don't need a technique to put the hammer down. They just go, why would I keep thinking about this if it's creating this painful feeling right now?
Right.
And it brings them back to the now, which is the only place any human being can experience well-being. No one can think their way to feeling peaceful or calm or happy, or it's impossible. It's only when we're not thinking that those feelings naturally arise, and you start, like if you're thinking about stuff, a problem while you're eating food, you won't taste your food. When you put that hammer down and you're present, food tastes really good.
It's very, very true. It's actually, you just like popping all these words out, I can relate to that, because trying to keep the mind still is a very difficult thing. And I found that a lot of people that have experienced trauma are very busy. They're
Yeah,
very
yeah,
overactive and very always thinking, but that's very creative. They don't know how to replace that thinking, uh,
yes.
that thought process with being constructive, where there is a product at the end of it, you know. So, and I think having to replace negative thinking, that takes some mastering, but it needs about people like yourself that are projecting about, look, we're doing this to ourselves. We can change the outcome with a
It
plan. We can
it
change the circumstances.
it In order to change our minds, it takes an insight that allows you to understand where your feeling is coming from. Because if I think, say my wife is in a low mood and she says something in that mood out of her negativity, and I have a lot of thinking about that and I get really upset, and I don't know where my feeling is coming from, I'm going to blame my wife for my upset. Now I've got a lot to think about. Why did she do that? And what am I going to do about this? And how am I going to deal with this? And I'm not going to put up with this. And I used to spend literally days thinking about stuff that had happened days ago because I thought that was the source of my problem. And I have to figure out how to get away from that problem or to eliminate it. I've got to figure out how to change that person so they're never like that again, so I don't have to feel this way. Once I started to see it was my own thinking, as soon as I realized I'm just sitting here thinking up a story that's creating this incredible feeling. It's not bad, it's not wrong, but that's where the feeling is coming from. If you start a fire and you put a stick on it, it'll burn. If you keep throwing sticks on it, it'll keep burning. I was throwing thoughts, thought after thought after thought. I could be upset about something for days or worried about something for days. I was good at that. They were habits of thinking I developed because I thought my problem was out there and I'm damaged. The problem's out there. I got to figure this out. And I spent so much time trying to figure out how to live my life and how to respond to people and how to deal with things. And I was always thinking, just like the people you're describing, clients come to see me and they're innocently caught up in an outside in view of life and they're thinking constantly. And as they start to have insight into the nature of thought, they start having less and less thinking. Kerry, most adults, if you observe, when they have a problem of any kind, do even more thinking. And you can't think your way to well-being. You can't think your way to clarity. You can't think your way to insight. You can't think your way to feelings that are uplifting, that help you be strong and courageous and assertive and kind and loving. And it's impossible. And when we disengage from our computer, from our intellect, those feelings of well-being are already there, and the perfect one for you will come to the fore, whether it's courage or compassion or kindness or love, or it'll bring you that. But I had to find out if that was true. I didn't want to take anybody's, I was such a skeptic. And I had been 10 years a psychologist, and I was very jaded because life is complicated and difficult. It can't be this simple. It can't be as simple as we're thinkers, we're aware, and we're connected to a deeper wisdom, a deeper intelligence, that when our minds are clear, that deeper wisdom will bring us feelings of well-being and creative, new and fresh thinking that's helpful. We won't get new and fresh thinking while we're holding on to old negative thought. It's impossible. You have to let it go to get the new. That's people who are creative. My wife's an artist. She's always letting go of her thinking and enjoying the present moment. Her senses come alive. And then out of that feeling, she can paint really well and does beautiful, beautiful paintings.
Expressive art. Expressive art, creative art.
We're all that way, though.
Mm-hmm.
We all, when our mind's clear, it's unbelievable the creativity that comes through us on what to say, what to do, how to deal with people. I don't have to figure that out. The computer doesn't have wisdom. You can't analyze your way to wisdom. And I used to try to analyze my way to solutions to every one of my problems. So it was a nonstop job. I wasn't present to life. I wasn't enjoying life. I was constantly thinking, which creates a degree of anxiety or tension or stress.
Yeah.
Anybody who's constantly thinking.
And it is, I know. I'm constantly thinking, and it's very difficult, but it's only as difficult as I want to make it, because I look at who am I owing my life to. So I'm
Yeah,
changing the thought process even in that moment, because every minute there's a thought process. I could feel a little bit guilty. Oh my God, you're not doing anything today. People are relying on you. Hold on a minute. People are relying on them too to get up and spread the same message. I don't have to do everything. So I have to rationalize with those thought process
yeah,
to remove guilt. So it's again the pampering of your mind and being kind to yourself. Um, Many
yeah.
times we've been unkind to
Yeah,
ourselves.
I like that you see that. Being kind to ourselves when we come back to the present moment is the kindest gift we can give ourselves, because it's only in the present that we can be uplifted from within, nourished from within. It's a way of self-love to let go of thoughts that burden us, come back to the now and be uplifted. That's what self-love is. And you do that, Kerry. Listen, when we first met, I didn't know you before we met. You were really present. You were very kind. You were very welcoming. You were very warm. You were in your well being. And then, like the rest of us, at times you can get caught up in thinking, me too,
Yeah,
still, me too, still. But now I'm catching on to, if I do that in a way that's not healthy, there's tension, stress, or upset. And those feelings then are friendly. They remind me, oh, of the hammer. And I put the thought hammer down, worry or judgments or negativity or
because when I met you, I was giggling. Sorry, I came on and I was giggling, and I was
yeah,
excited. I replaced the nerves to look at this as an opportunity, and I'm using that word a lot with my
yeah,
thought process. Opportunity,
yeah,
opportunity, and that's a word that I'm using to overcome, to not run away from an
yeah.
opportunity, because I'm so good at I
look at
was
look
past
at you,
tense.
Kerry. Not run away from an opportunity. So you face an opportunity and you get present. And when any human being is really present, they can giggle, they can enjoy.
Yeah,
Can I tell you a story about a client?
good kid.
Uh, she had a job working outdoors and was very physically active. She was maybe 35 years old. And she got injured and she was in a lot of pain. And she had already been suffering with bouts of depression throughout her life. And now she couldn't do what she loved to do. So she's at home, nothing to do, in pain all the time. She became suicidal. Her mom, who loved her to pieces, knew about the work I did. And she begged her daughter, I know you've gone through lots of therapy, and I know you think it hasn't really helped you because look at you, you're suicidal. And I just want you to give this a try. So she calls me up and I get her on the phone and she says, my mom tells me I have to do this and I don't think it's going to work because nothing has helped me so far. I've done medications, I've done therapies, and I'm still depressed and I'm still suicidal. So I'm going to come up and do your 4-day program. But if this doesn't work, I'm telling you right now, I'm killing myself. Now I have confidence, Kerry, that I don't have to get people to have well being. they already have it. They just don't know it because they've spent so much of their life caught up in negative thought, thinking it's true, and then thinking it has to do with other people or situations or their biochemistry or their past or their personality, anything other than thought. And
Mhm.
it's not their fault. It wasn't my fault that I was caught up in my thinking as much as I was in suffering. I didn't wake up in the morning and saying, I think I'm going to think myself sick today. It just happened, and I didn't know how it worked. And she didn't either. But I knew she's no different. She's we're built for insights. If people just listen quietly, they can't help but to get insights. That's how we learn anything. So she came up to see me, and she's just clinically deeply depressed. But you know what? She got some hope just because I had so much hope for her. And so she was willing to listen. Now, you can't think and listen at the same time, Kerry. Listening is like I've worked with people having psychotic episodes, and I say, "Would you listen to me?" And they say, "Okay." And they're one step away from the now,
Yeah.
and therefore they're one step away from their well-being. That's what I learned from my teacher that I had never heard anybody say. So it's like, so anyways, she's listening, and then while we were working, at times she would just get giggling too, like you, because that's just her. When her mind clears, when people's minds clear, their well-being starts to bubble out and come forward. And that's why we have certain friends that when we're together with, we get together and we let go of all our negative thinking and we just have fun with them. And if we don't understand how that works, we'll blame them for why we feel good. You made me feel good.
Yeah.
We
I
won't
can
know
relate
it's
to that too.
I know, I know. If we don't understand how thought works, we don't know where our tension, stress, and upset come from, but we also don't know where our happiness and well-being come from. We think, well, I feel good because the sun came out. You said, well, yesterday the sun was out all day and you were miserable.
There was a time in my life that I forgot how to laugh. My even laugh never was the same again. I thought,
Mhm.
oh, this is strange. I'm trying to, it's not working. And so when my laugh came back, only then I felt, oh, because you miss it all. Don't you? You miss it all. So
You do.
being in the present, being here in the here and now, being aware of the surroundings, you brought a lot of awareness today. Um,
That's right. That's what happened to her. During our session, she kept telling me, Dicken, I'm still depressed. I don't know if this is working, but she was becoming more and more present, more and more lighthearted. We just would have a wonderful time together. And then she'd get back to thinking about her life. And, I have to make all these major decisions. I can't do the work I have to do. I don't know what else to do. And I'm depressed and I can't think and I can't decide and I have to. And what about my house? And I can't pay the mortgage. And am I going to have to sell it? And she'd think about these things forever and get more and more anxious, more depressed, more upset. And so I could see her doing less of that. So I knew she was having insight. And when you have insight, you can't unlearn it. Once you start knowing it really is thought creating my feelings, you can't unlearn that. You can forget it and get caught back up in thought. God knows I do. But you keep coming back to, oh, yeah, I'm just caught up in my thinking. And you come back to the now and you learn how to rest in the now. Most adults are not good at resting in the now. And it's only in the now we can experience our well being, where we can enjoy life and laugh and giggle and connect
yeah,
with people,
yeah,
right? If I don't feel close to my wife, I know I'm not present. Because when I get really present, it's like I think she's cute no matter what mood she's in. And she's just innocently at times caught up in her thinking like me, so I can forgive her. I can say, oh yeah, well, you're just caught up, that happens. And instead of being pissed, I can be kind to her, knowing that it's just a bunch of thoughts, she'll get over it, which she does every time, which we all do, but we don't realize it.
Mm.
So we finished 4 days, and she left saying, Dicken, I don't know. I like you. I enjoyed our time together. I don't know. I'm still depressed. So we were going to have 4 follow-up phone calls. So the time came 5 days later for our first phone call. 5 minutes late, 10 minutes late, 15 minutes late, and I'm going, oh no. I started having some thinking, Kerry.
Yeah.
And then 20 after the phone rings, she says, oh, I'm so sorry. I just lost track of time. And she says, Dicken, I'm still depressed. 95% of the time I'm depressed. But 2 things have happened since I've come home. One is that for about 5 minutes a day, I recognize my well-being. And that's the only time I try to make decisions during those 5 minutes. I don't even try and struggle over decisions like I used to when I feel lousy. And I've made some great decisions in my 5 minutes a day, right? I just see what makes sense, what feels right, what makes sense, and I go with it. You help me to learn that common sense is available to everybody when we're open to it. So I'm learning to listen for my common sense during those 5 minutes when I feel good. Then she said, the second thing, deep inside me, is like somebody is laughing now. That's what hope sounds like. She had hope. Maybe I'm not damaged. Maybe I have well-being inside. Maybe those 5 minutes, rather than being the exception, are the rule, that is my well-being and that I do have it. She got hope for the first time. We had 4 talks, really good talks, and she's making great decisions. She's feeling better about herself, but she's saying, I'm still depressed, but I don't know, I feel different. I saw her 6 months later. She walks up to me. She's with her mother. She walks up to me, stands in front of me and goes, Dicken, 50%. Smiles and walks away. It was 95% depressed. Now it's just 50%. I saw her 6 months after that. She walks up to me and said, I can honestly say I don't have depression at all. I'm enjoying life. I'm living in the now so much more of the time. Sure, I get caught up in my thinking and I get upset or I get down, and so what? That's natural. I just let it go and it passes. And when it passes, understanding that it's thought creating feeling allows people to be resilient. In other words, they get over their upset quicker. And if people have resilience, they have well-being. And then if people learn to value the now, they spend more time there. And then if people live in the now more often, they have more and more of these feelings of well-being, lifting their spirits. And that's how people naturally get over traumas and suffering, psychological suffering, because it's not ultimately who we are.
Okay. So a tip to people out there, for me, when you say get over their pain and suffering, over here a lot in the UK, constantly people are recognizing one another by identifying with each other that they have the same label,
Yeah.
so that becomes a topic of, oh, it's my PTSD or PT, traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, trauma. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they will actually specifically spell that out. Oh, it's PTSD, or it's my diagnosis. I've done all of that, blaming it on the once new label that they once give me. Oh, hey, I can identify this emotion. It's called this now. In actual fact, that's actually quite 10 times worse, because that label is not allowing you to move forward. So we have to try to remove the stigma, those kind of labels, and place them where they're necessarily used as and when they need to be used, with the people that are using that kind of love language, you know. But I'll say people that can make themselves more ill by focusing on those things. They're the wrong things. They're not the healing. It's the
Yeah.
label. And then in focusing on that label can make people feel more intense. And it's about, as you said, everything that you've already said, that self-discovery.
When I started as a psychologist, the diagnostic manual for psychologists and psychiatrists was quite thin. And every year they added more labels.
Yeah.
And it got thicker and thicker and thicker and more versions. In other words, we've gotten better and better at looking at people who are caught up in negative thought, watching how they behave, and then creating a label or diagnosis for that particular way of behaving when you're caught up. Now, the good news is beneath all of the thinking we're caught up in is another label for people. You have perfect well-being. And like every other human being, at times you get caught up in your thinking and think it's true, and then you suffer. Now, that's true of every single human being on this planet. So if we're going to put a label on somebody, we can say you have perfect well-being inside, and at times you get caught up in your thinking, think it's true, and then act out of that way of thinking.
Yeah.
Right? And only when people have insight that I'm a thinker and behind my thinking is presence, and in presence, well-being arises. When people discover the truth of that and experience it, they have so much hope. I'm not damaged. My well-being is always intact. It can't be hurt. It's a spiritual energy that creates new life, new feelings of love and connection and well-being. And we're built for that. When people begin to have insight into that, they drop all the old labels and saying labels are just ways of thinking about people while they're at their worst, and then saying that's who they are. That's not who they are. If you looked at me like today at my very worst, you could certainly put a label on
it. Yeah. I'm sitting there thinking about the book that I've got, which says you are this. Oh, by the way, there's no cure. We should make somebody look what you're reading now. Hold on a minute.
Yeah.
There's challenges in life, and I think getting the awareness from
people want relief from suffering.
They do.
It's no fun to suffer.
No,
But I've never met a person who wakes up in the morning saying, I think I'm going to just create a lot of suffering for myself so that I can feel miserable. People innocently get caught up in thought and they don't even know that that's a problem.
That's right.
They don't even know. And they have no clue that the feeling they're in is created from the thinking they're having at that moment. And they have no clue that behind that thinking is presence. And in presence, well-being arises. So it's like there's the clouds we're caught up in. You go beyond the clouds, there's always blue sky of presence, being awake, wide open, senses wide open. And then the sun brings warmth and nourishment. And that's why people begin to have feelings of well-being that nourish us. They nourish us. We're being nourished from our soul, and they uplift us. And then we get new and fresh thinking, possibilities. You start seeing things as opportunity. Oh, I could do this. Oh, I could do that. I'm not locked into a certain way of being or doing. I can be open to what makes sense in this moment. It's very hopeful, Kerry. It's very, very hopeful.
Very, very powerful. Can you go backwards in life? Choices. Where can they find you? Where can everybody find you and what you're delivering?
Well,
are you contactable?
If people want to hear me talk about this more, somebody pointed this out to me. I didn't even realize, but I've been because I've given so many talks all over the world, and often they're videotaped, and people put them on YouTube. So if you Google my name, Dicken Bettinger, on YouTube, you'll find pages of talks
Information is
I've
there
given,
already.
talks I've given. Um, you can check out the man who was my teacher in all of this, Sydney Banks, and there's a website, www.sidbanks.com. I'm on the board of an organization called the Three Principles Global Community, and we have a website, 3PGC, Three Principles Global Community.org. And if you go there, there's lots of free videos, free materials, free information.
Knowledge is all knowledge. So,
Oh,
if you missed it
good.
today,
It's
catch up.
all the same simple, pointing us toward the simple truths that we live in the world of thought. We're aware beings, and we have access to a deeper intelligence and well-being. And those are facts. Those are true. Those are not theories. They're not ideas. All human beings think, right? All human beings are aware. All human beings have the capacity for new thought, for deeper feelings. Every human being does, no exception. So to begin to learn about, it's it's learning about what's true. It's learning about the truth of thought, the truth of consciousness, the truth of mind.
Mhm.
And then you have insight into that, and it changes, it brings you even more well-being because you have less thinking that burdens you because you're not interested in doing a lot of the thinking you were doing before or holding on to it. Or even when you have it, just to not think it's true. I can feel horrible, have horrible thoughts if I know they're not true, they're just thoughts.
Yeah,
It doesn't frighten me,
yeah,
and
you
I
gave
don't
me
and I
that
don't act on them. I don't act on them.
important message there. Don't act on those thoughts.
Yeah,
Give your
yeah, it
time
is.
to
When
reflect.
you're really upset, don't take your thinking too seriously, and that's not a good time to act on it or make a decision or have a conversation with somebody, or wait a little bit. That thinking will pass, and then you'll be able to talk from your well-being, and
I found,
it's a whole different talk.
and on a final note, I found that when you do get those emotions and they start to rise, put
Yes.
yourself in a little volcano and you're bubbling there, and you don't want it to get to the top. So for me, I found that breathing techniques worked. It settled the mind. It gave you time to reflect solely on your breathing, which then changed and shifted the thought process to get your
Yeah,
breathing right. And it
yeah.
actually takes it down a notch. And that's quite
Mhm.
helpful. And I call that the distraction technique also.
Yeah,
Yeah,
breathing brings us back to the present moment,
yeah.
and it's hard to really be breathing well and thinking about a problem at the same time. And so when we come back to breathing, we come back to the now, and in the now we start feeling lighter and better because we're built for that. It's already there. It's not broken. It's not damaged. It's always going to do that. The sun's always there. It's not damaged by the weather.
That's
Right?
Thank you for today. I really do appreciate Dr.
Kerry, you're welcome.
Bettinger.
It's
I
been
said
my
his name
pleasure.
correct. Yeah, I really appreciate everything that you're doing for the community, bringing awareness into, planting the seed, I call it, and going from there. What I ask viewers that have watched to support what we do, to raise awareness by a simple share button. Pass the knowledge over. That's
Wow.
what we ask. It will help
You,
one another.
you are, Kerry, you are just delightful. You have such a good spirit, and you're so optimistic and hopeful and kind. And it's perfect that you have the wings behind you, because I can see how what you've learned so far in life has allowed you to take flight and soar once in a while, and then come back down to earth and peck
Yeah,
around in like the rest of us ordinary chickens down
absolutely.
in the down in the dirt, and then your head clears and you start soaring again. You're delightful, Kerry. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for having you. Thank you, viewers, as well. Thank you. Hold your best smile out. That's what I always say. Dickens Bettinger, you know, studying the three principles. He's just talking about, forget the labels, he's talking about how you can clear your mind, how you can understand your mind a little bit better. I hope you guys took something out of that. We're here to raise awareness, Mind Over Matter Project, suicide prevention. You can contact us on www.momproject.co.uk. I am Kerry Mussington, and I'm off, flying away. Take care of yourself. Bye bye.